This is a test. Okay. This is an expansion of the permission structure. We cannot permit them to do this. We have to fight back. Like, what's to stop if they can overturn the democratic process in Virginia by way of the Supreme Court of Virginia? What's to stop them from trying this in other states? What's to stop them from doing this at the federal level? Hello? Do you guys not understand what the fuck's going on? Like, okay, let's just let them overturn elections. And then when they do, like they did here, right? When they overturn the election, we'll just go, well, sucks to suck. We'll get him next time. The VA Supreme Court denied the results of the redistricting referendum. SCOTUS gutted the Voting Rights Act, and Tennessee carved up the last Dem district, destroying black voter power in the state. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. Now, many of you are probably familiar with this quote. If you have done any reading whatsoever, you know that this is JFK, right? And of course, classic, I said, democracy is a pressure valve for the public. This kind of systemic disenfranchisement will inevitably lead to chaos, okay? And this, of course, frustrated every Republican, including former Republican Stacey K. But the Voting Rights Act being repealed was all the result of peaceful right-wing revolution. They accomplished the rollback of Voting Rights Act by winning important elections over the span of the last 30 years. Revolution isn't necessarily a left-wing thing. I didn't say that. That's precisely the reason why I'm using the JFK quote, okay? Also, I wouldn't say that the Republican takeover of American politics has been peaceful at all. Anyway, Ted Cruz obviously responded immediately. This is who the Democrats are campaigning alongside. The is openly calling for violent revolution. Humiliating even for you. They don't teach JFK quotes at Harvard, or maybe you missed it when you grew up in Canada. It's just everyone is dunking on him, okay? And then there's the people who are going, actually. Like, this is my favorite type of dumbass, right? Guy who will come in to be like, well, to be fair, it's JFK's quote, but Hassan openly calls for violence. So I'm going to totally rob the nuance of the context of the situation, right? Like, what are you doing? And then I click on their profile and they're not even a liberal. Or wait. Maybe they are. You can check all the quotes here. Oh, yeah, no, it's just Ben Shapiro, Cartier communist, Bill Melugin, okay? Bill Melugin, Will Chamberlain, denaturalized, deport Hassan Piker, Andy No. It's a real who's who. And then Tim Miller, who also came in hot, okay? This is funny, though. The quote Hassan is deploying here is from JFK, but I can understand why Ted Cruz might not be a fan of JFK. Yeah, possibly because his dad wasn't a fan of JFK, okay? Tim Miller says, do not think people should consider violence over Virginia gerrymandering rulings. There are plenty of other remedies. In fact, Democrats are likely to win 8 seats out of 11 and control the House of Representatives. I said, I'm not advocating for violence. I don't think JFK was either. I said, I understand. I just think the quote isn't applicable in the case of Virginia. To which I said, I think the VA Supreme Court and the gutting of the VRA are a part of the same nakedly partisan court system that actively works to overturn the democratic wishes of the majority and disenfranchise people. Where do you think this will go if the people of Tennessee lose faith in democracy altogether? The Tennessee situation is materially different from VA. It's really grotesque. Spent most of the pot on it today. The state can barely be described as a democracy at this point, and I can understand why people would be demoralized. That said, is it worse than Hungary, which just defeated an authoritarian without mass violence? I don't believe so. There are a lot of great people, Jonas Pearson, Tennessee Holler, doing revolutionary organizing there without suggesting the answer may be violence. If anything, violence there would probably empower the authoritarians elsewhere. I once again, Tim Miller's like, I understand the point that you're making, but I'm still going to act like you're advocating for violence. I'm not advocating for violence. I'm saying if you keep destroying different pressure valves, if you keep telling people they can't protest in the streets, if you jail them over it, okay? If you take away their power to vote, if you take away their representation, then people are inevitably going to lead in that direction, which is, ironically enough, exactly what JFK was talking about, right? That's it. It's nothing new. I don't think he understands that this sentiment isn't promoting violent action. It's that it leads people other than you making that choice. It's about removing a pressure valve. Yes, I make it very clear. And yet there are plenty of liberals who despise someone ever leaning into systemic analysis. There are plenty of people who think analysis equals endorsement. There are plenty of people who genuinely cannot comprehend someone saying, look, these kinds of seismic shifts that disenfranchise voters, if left unchecked, will inevitably create a destabilized system. And in the aftermath of said destabilized system where people have no pressure valves, they will take violent actions. This is not to promote violent revolution. It's to try to avoid violent revolution. Your post needs to include analysis alert. Yeah. Abdul Al-Sayed, are you going to condemn your buddy's call for a violent revolution? Yeah, I don't think Abdul Al-Sayed is going to call out JFK. I don't think he's gonna. Abdul Al-Sayed, do you condemn JFK? Don't you think JFK is Hamas? They hate the messenger, but you're the boy who cried wolf, but it was a wolf getting closer and closer and closer. Never that it wasn't coming, in my honest opinion. Yeah. Graham Plattner says, just ignore the court ruling. I'm old enough to remember when Republicans in Ohio just ignored court rulings repeatedly and did it anyway. Yeah, I think they should, by the way. I agree. Which, by the way, VA Dems are not. They're saying we respect the decision of the Supreme Court of Virginia. I don't respect it. Okay? Fuck it. Ball. Fuck it. We play ball. What are we doing? Why did you even do this to begin with if you're not going to push for it? Like, these guys are shaking up the system on a daily basis. You have to shake it back in order to defend your constituents, in order to defend democracy. This is something that I have talked about quite frequently. Okay? Democrats, in an effort to consistently point back to the institutions and their infallibility, keep giving in to the Republicans who are destroying said institutions. Leftist streamer Hassan Piker calls violent revolution inevitable after Supreme Court throws out Democrat redistricting map that would have given the party a 10-1 House advantage. Get the full story. It's so insincere, and I personally don't give a shit, you know? It's so unbelievably insincere, no matter what happens. Hassan, if you leave the cake in the oven for too long, you will burn it. Them, how dare you suggest we burn the cake? Yeah. Randy Fine is adding director cash. Democrat leading spokesperson and Muslim terrorist Hassan Piker is calling for violence in the aftermath of the court ruling striking down to illegal gerrymander in Virginia. Democrats have made Muslim terror violence a core part of their party. I love that the moderate Democratic wing, by the way, is like pretty much right there with Randy Fine. Like, they haven't resorted to calling me a radical Muslim terrorist, but they certainly don't have an issue with it. Yeah, quoting JFK is terrorism. Quoting JFK is terrorism. Great. All right, I guess I'm going to prison. What am I supposed to do? What kind of an idiotic country do we live in? And this was a very salient take, okay, and I totally agree with it. When I say the country is institutionally rigged for Republicans, I'm talking about how Virginia gets their maps struck down after a 2-year process involving multiple legislative sessions and a statewide referendum, but Tennessee can just decide not to enfranchise Memphis anymore. And that's literally what's going on here. It is so frustrating. So that's our top story for today. Let's get right into it.
Struck down a new
Democrats are taking a significant blow from the Virginia Supreme Court in the aftermath of this referendum that took place to redraw these maps. Brutal last 10 days in redistricting. Clay's decision significantly weakens the Voting Rights Act, opening the door for more redraws. Tennessee Republicans passed 9-0 congressional map. LA on track to eliminate at least one Dem seat. A VA Supreme Court overturns Dem's 10-1 map. I mean, it's so obvious what's going on. These judges are basically playing politics, but they're wearing a robe while doing it. How do you not see it? How can you not see exactly what's going on? No, LA is Louisiana, chat. Louisiana is on track to eliminate at least one Dem seat. They're politicians in robes. They're nakedly partisan.
Congressional map that was passed by voters last month. Democrats have proposed a new map with the hopes of flipping 4 Republican-held House seats, and this is the latest battle in what's become this nationwide redistricting war. CNN's Arlette Saenz is here in the Situation Room, and Arlette, this is a big blow to Democrats.
Yeah, it really is. Democrats had been hoping to shore up their efforts to try to reclaim the majority, but this ruling from Virginia State Supreme Court is a significant derailment of those Democratic plans. Now, the Virginia State Supreme Court ruled that the creation of this referendum that happened last month violated the state's constitution. Our team is still reading this opinion, but this certainly will be a major setback for Democrats going forward. Democrats had drawn this map hoping to create an additional 4 seats for Democrats in next year's Congress. They had kind of sliced up the more Democratic suburban areas of the Washington, D.C. area to make these districts that pinwheeled out into more rural areas. But now, for the time being, this is prevented from going forward. This is made even more complicated by the fact that we have seen so many Republican states swiftly moving over the last week to redraw their maps. We've seen Florida and Tennessee pass measures to try to draw their maps and gain more Republican seats. There are other efforts underway in Louisiana, Alabama, and South Carolina as well. And so that really can potentially shift the way that some of these House races are going to look heading into November. You know, Democrats are really hoping that they can reclaim the majority. They feel that they have a lot of the political, economic headwinds are working in their favor. But certainly this is a major setback in this redistricting race, as we've seen states across the country, Republican and Democrats, trying to redraw their congressional maps to acquire more seats in what's going to be a very close midterm election.
And you're seeing a difference in how some of the states are doing it. Like in Virginia, it was the voters, right, who voted for the redistricting. In other states, you're seeing the legislature take the reins and do it themselves, right?
And that's one thing that Democrats have tried to argue is different from what they are doing compared to what some of these Republican states have been doing. We saw California and Virginia come out with referendums where
the system is unbelievably favored for Republicans to continue leaning into white supremacist values and disenfranchise certain groups of voters, specifically black voters, that end up voting for the Democratic Party. Okay, this is not new. This is literally the history of the civil rights struggle. This is why the Voting Rights Act had to be passed to begin with. Doesn't make any sense that we're even having this conversation. We knew that this was going to happen. And that was literally the GOP's assessment from the start, where they were like, oh, there's no need for this anymore, right? There's no need. There's no need for any sort of checks, any sort of safeguard measures that will ensure that there is democratic participation and black voices will be heard in the South. Brother, there was a war that was fought to disenfranchise black people, or continue their disenfranchisement, continue their slavery, as a matter of fact. And there was plenty of wars that were waged to ensure that that disenfranchisement continued in the South, especially. The idea that the Republicans would play ball and they would be nice if there was no such rules stopping them from doing this is totally ridiculous. Obviously, the Tennessee Republicans are using the new VRA decision coming down from the Supreme Court to their advantage to say, no, this is a nakedly partisan thing. No, it's not a nakedly partisan thing. Okay, you're not redistricting specifically in a nakedly partisan manner. You're redistricting to disenfranchise black voters. Okay. That's it. It's very clear what's going on.
Our voters had to decide if they...
And this is the Tennessee side of the conversation. I'm not talking about Virginia in this circumstance. But those two things are tied to one another. The Supreme Court decision that undermined the VRA is exactly what is tied to the same thing that took place in Virginia. If the Democrats want to combat the Republican redistricting in Texas, they have to go through this long and convoluted process. Right? They even leave it up to the voters. They put out a referendum and the people of Virginia vote. The people of Virginia vote for that redistricting. And then they redraw the maps. Okay. And then the Virginia Supreme Court goes, nah, sorry, doesn't work that way. What the do you mean? It doesn't work that way. None of you guys were had a significant say in this. Like, the people voted. You're denying the wishes of 3 million people in Virginia. What the f are you talking about? I agree. This is not Canada. We uphold the Constitution and Supreme Court rulings here. No, you don't. Sarah Longwell replied, instead of violent revolution, maybe we could persuade a lot more people to vote Democrat than Republicans. Worth a try. Oh my God. Oh my God. One, I'm not advocating for a violent revolution, but let me tell you, between you and I think you're the one who's leaning further into that direction. You're making it inevitable. You're advocating for the inevitability of that with this kind of sentiment. Oh, come on, just vote harder. The f you mean just vote harder? They did vote. This is a denial of their vote. That's the conversation we're having. People voted super hard. What do you do when people vote And then the Supreme Court turns around and says, sucks to suck. Huh?
Actually want to move this forward. And this was a very close race that happened just a little over 2 weeks ago. I think that this passed by about 3 percentage points. So it's something that Virginia voters were very torn up about, but had decided to move forward with. But then we have seen more Republican-led states really turn and try to just do this through their state legislators, with Texas being the state.
By the way, this is a test. Okay? This is an expansion of the permission structure. We cannot permit them to do this. We have to fight back. Like, what's to stop if they can overturn the democratic process in Virginia by way of the Supreme Court of Virginia? What's to stop them from trying this in other states? What's to stop them from doing this at the federal level? Hello? Do you guys not understand what the fuck's going on? Like, okay, let's just let them overturn elections. And then when they do, like they did here, right? When they overturn the election, we'll just go, well, sucks to suck. We'll get him next time. We'll just vote harder next time. Okay, and then they overturn that. What do we do? Vote even extra hard? Is that what we're going to do? What happens when voting doesn't matter? Because that's where we're at right now. The problem is they control the Justice Department, so they can do whatever. They can do it like we're awesome when we try to do it. They're like, we're prosecuting. I know, they're already doing that. They're doing that to Louise in Virginia, who was spearheading the effort. She was spearheading the redistricting effort, and they literally sent the goons from the DOJ to prosecute her. What are we doing? What are we doing? We are living through fascism right now, and people are just oblivious to this reality. Okay, it's in the middle stages. It hasn't been completely finalized as a fascist project, but we have to do something about it. Like, the reason why these redistricting battles are taking place is because Trump is unpopular and he knows it. Okay, he knows he's going to lose the House of Representatives and possibly the Senate too. He doesn't want the people's democratic will to be recognized. That's why they're redistricting. They're playing the board because they don't have the numbers, and people are out here going, just vote harder next time. Be careful, they will come for you next. Man, I know that. What the f do you mean? I know that. I know that already. By the way, come for you next. They're already coming for me. What have you been paying attention to the news for like the last 3 months? It's been non-stop. Dem response to VA court decision is telling people to turn out and vote, even though they just did that and it didn't work. Do you think the courts are going to overturn the midterm results? They might as well. If we let them, yes. Yes, actually, yes. They just did. They overturned a referendum. A referendum is an act of direct democracy, okay? It is the most participatory democratic process that you can engage in. It's black and white, okay? It is more of a direct act of democracy than even voting for a representative, okay? It's the most basic form of direct democracy you can have. It's the most democratic process. And the Virginia Supreme Court was like, nope, no reason not to redraw CA to be 52-0. Oh, 100%, 100%. Look, if this game is busted, but there are more Democrats in general around the country, or more people who want to vote against the Republicans in this country, let's not say more Democrats, right? But people that want to punish the current administration, they want their voices to be heard. This is what you got to do. Florida changed their maps in like 3 days. Why does it take so long for the Dems to do it? Because the Democratic Party is so used to being the conciliatory party, the party that does concessions to the Republicans, that they have they don't have a dog. They don't have the dog in them. It's that simple. Why do you think I'm going around the country trying to elect people who will fight? Because by and large, there are Democrats out there that genuinely want to fight back. They're not my ideological allies in any way, shape, or form. What, you think a Democratic state legislator from the state of Virginia who is a fan of me or even a fan of the things I say? No, of course not. But it doesn't matter. because anyone that recognizes the danger, okay, the president pro tempore of the Senate of Virginia, representing the 18th district, Louise Lucas, okay, do you think Louise Lucas and I see the world in the same way? Do you think out of 10 issues, do you think Louise and I agree on 9 of them? No, but we agree on the one thing, and that is that we have to fight back against the fascist Republican Party, and that's the one issue that matters. Okay? That's it. I don't have an issue. If the Democrats are going to put up a strong fight, a strong opposition, I'm there with them. I'm by their side. I'll be their biggest, loudest champion. That's it. I don't give a shit if we don't agree on any of the other stuff. This is an unbelievably important, if not the most important problem right now. So many people refuse to recognize that. So many people refuse to reckon with that, okay? Maybe even some to my left refuse to reckon with that, where they're like, oh, well, this is a bourgeois democracy. Why are you even participating in the electoral process? Well, there's a reason for why I'm participating in it. Because we don't have the revolutionary fervor. We don't have the organizational capacity at this moment. We don't even have the class consciousness where people actually recognize that they're working class. And I don't want this country to turn into a full-blown fascist autocracy. And we're already in the middle stages of that transition right now, and people seemingly don't realize it. A great example of that fascist autocracy taking shape is the fact that the FBI raided the office of Virginia Senate President pro tempore, L. Louise Lucas. This comes weeks after she spearheaded a redistricting effort in Virginia, netting up to 4 new blue seats.
Another one.
Clip of Jackson Hinkle saying your strategy worked on him. Jackson Hinkle admits his eyes were opened by Bernie Sanders. Hinkle expressed disdain for Hassan Piker's strategy of trying to induce class consciousness into liberals through social dems. When he himself was first introduced to socialism by Bernie Sanders, he opened my eyes.
Take Bernie Sanders, who's just your average social dem. I mean, he's a liberal Democrat. I don't even know what social democrat means anymore. He's not what we want, but I think he opens the eyes of many liberals who have never heard the word socialism used in a positive context. Well, you know, yeah, he did, right? He opened my eyes. But then my eyes were really not open. My eyes were only open when I realized that, oh, that's not socialism at all.
Anyway, probably not the best example, but these are some of the people like spearheading the anti-Hassan movement on my left flank, or at least they claim to be on my left flank, which I don't think they are. Okay. I've noticed a sickening trend. Men who themselves are against or support others who are against Medicare for all, affordable housing, voting rights, freedom of speech, equal rights overall, are either sex traffickers, pedos, rapists, into child pornography, or other some sexual predator. I need someone smarter to. Yeah, I have seen this too. I just love puzzles is right. The real dark general commander Jay Jones, Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones, the OG liberal driller, released a statement on the Supreme Court of Virginia striking down 10D1R congressional map. Today, the Supreme Court of Virginia has chosen to put politics over the rule of law by issuing a ruling that overturns the April 21st special election on redistricting. This decision silences the voice of millions of Virginians who cast their ballots in every corner of the Commonwealth, and it fuels the growing fears across our nation about the state of our democracy. That's my goat. Jay Jones is the dark woke general, okay? If you guys remember, he was saying in his private correspondence some crazy things. And then guess what? Guess what? The people of Virginia were like, that's my guy, okay? My team is carefully reviewing this unprecedented order, and we are evaluating every legal pathway forward to defend the will of the people and protect the integrity of Virginia's elections. Arrest them. Jay, arrest these charlatans who are playing partisan politics while they wear those robes, and you will be reincarnated as a lotus flower. Jay Jones, do it. Do what must be done, Jay. Do what must be done. Okay? Impeach these judges. Arrest them. Do what must be done, Jay. That's my goat. Comrade Jones will seize victory once again. That's the really only choice. I checked the VA Constitution and their Supreme Court rules on their own impeachments. Anyway, can the ruling be appealed? No, I don't think so. It's so surreal watching you address a photo of a dude I went to middle school with, but it's amazing too. I mean, listen, I'm a fan, okay? I love Jay Jones. You guys know this. Yeah. The only way that it can get appealed is obviously the Supreme Court of the United States, and we all know that's not going to happen, okay? Not this Supreme Court. Maybe they can ignore it, though, and then, see where it goes from that point on. I mean, obviously, the administration will try to take strong authoritarian action against that sort of thing, but the reality of the matter is sometimes you have to fight these battles, okay?
That really kicked off this whole redistricting battle last summer.
It's a huge loss for Democrats who spent tens of millions of dollars persuading Virginia voters to approve the new map. And it comes one day after Tennessee's governor signed into law a new Republican gerrymander that breaks up the only majority black district in the state. Louisiana, Alabama, and South Carolina may soon pass their own last-minute maps. So here's where that leaves the redistricting wars nationwide right now. Republicans have targeted 14 extra seats. Democrats could pick up 6. Theoretically, it would be an 8-seat GOP advantage. But here's an important caveat. Just because a seat is redrawn by Republicans or even Democrats doesn't mean it automatically goes that way, especially in a year like this one.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I think that's also okay. No, like there is a much higher likelihood. There's a much higher likelihood. That's the reason why they're stopping it. Like the idea that we can just like go to, I don't know, like a R+20 district, for example, and like flip it with enough momentum is, I think, silly. And also, there's already a lot of initiatives that are set in place, set in motion to stop that from happening anyway. Okay, we're talking about turnout in midterms, but even then, like, let's say you boost turnout. Okay, what happens when they overturn those results? When will people go, okay, enough is enough?
Joined by a terrific group of reporters here at the table. The president did not waste much time crowing about this Supreme Court decision in Virginia. He said, huge win for the Republican Party.
Huge win for the Republican Party in America and Virginia. Wow. Wow, he's not even shying away.
America in Virginia. The Virginia Supreme Court has just struck down the Democrats' horrible gerrymander, Make America Great Again. If you talk to Democrats privately, they don't disagree with what the president just said. It is a big loss. Here's one senior Democratic official who I was texting with as I saw this report told me, not good. A major upset in our bid to win the House back, though we still can prevail. But the hill just got a little steeper, Isaac.
Yeah, another Democratic operative on House races this year said to me, look, 1.6 million people cast their vote and decided a very, very specific thing. And 4 unelected judges just said, piss off. I mean, that is the feeling among Democrats now. A real stinging defeat here. They thought that they would be getting this advantage in a bunch of these House districts in Virginia. Now they won't be. And there is not a lot of time left to get seats anywhere else, even as Republican-led states are moving, as you point out in that map, to try to get a couple more seats for them. This is, it is up to the people to vote, but this is very much a case of the politicians choosing the voters before the voters choose the politicians.
Which again, we should underscore, everybody is doing.
Yep,
and
for sure.
It started, the mid-decade push to do this started at the White House with President Trump. It's interesting, just with this Virginia decision, James Blair, the president's top political advisor right now, was sitting where you're sitting, Nia, last week or the week before, and he was really leaning into the notion that Virginia would strike this down.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. I've been texting with folks, and they're saying, and these are folks at the D-Trip saying, yes, this is a setback, but they feel like, they were trying to get 4 additional seats. Probably 2 of those they probably can get, particular if it's a wave.
Because it could be a bad year for Republicans.
It could be a bad year, but listen, this is a big blow. Hakeem Jeffries, I basically wrote a column that was like, this was great for Hakeem Jeffries, because he was all in on it. $38 million spent from a group affiliated with him. Obama was in on this, and now this is a big defeat. And one of the reasons why Virginia was so important as well was Democrats were anticipating this Supreme Court decision, which is also going to have massive effects. So they felt like they've got this sort of tranche of 4 seats, and now of course that's gone. Again, they're still hopeful that they can maybe get 1 or 2 of these seats, but it has been a big waste of money. They'll have to pivot maybe to 2028 because this was a procedural decision. It looks like the voters, at least by a small margin, wanted these maps, but they're going to have to wait at least 2 years to get these maps.
So we're reporting what Democrats are telling us privately. Here's the public messaging in light of this defeat in Virginia. Just for example, Gavin Newsom, no vote in Tennessee, no vote in Florida, no vote in Missouri, North Carolina, Texas. This is the key. Virginia's voter-approved maps thrown out. MAGA has rigged the system.
I mean, another way to win the election is to motivate people to come out and vote. That's exactly what that message is trying to do here. I would just note, when it comes to Congress itself and how it functions, the impact that this is going to have could be really extreme, because what you're starting to see is that middling, those districts that are hard fought, those make good members. Those make members who make our job really interesting, because they sometimes will cross the aisle and vote with the other party because they feel like that's what they need to do to stay competitive. The fewer of those districts you have, the less and less likely.
Bro, what the fuck? Do they not see that this is in the backdrop of a vote that took place that is currently overturned? Am I being too crazy about this? Maybe I am. Maybe they know something I don't. But it does shock me that without skipping a beat, CNN is like, oh, did the Supreme Court of Virginia overturn the votes of millions of Virginians? Well, the solution to that. It's to go out and vote harder. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What are we talking about? How hard? How hard are we voting here? Do you mean something different? What are we talking about here? You should vote, but then they pack it R+20. It would take an act of God to win there. That's what I mean. The whole point is, what is this? Did you see the SF publication calling you out for being at Shykot's rally? Use the legendary photo of you eyeing the food. It's messed up. POV, you vote extra hard.
Play that funky music, white boy. Play that funky music, white boy.
Yeah, I think the Democrats should simply ignore the Supreme Court ruling. Malcolm X holding ballot by any votes necessary. Exactly. No, this is famous. This is the famous photo. This is the famous photo of Malcolm X doing what must be done, which is, by any votes necessary, voting extra hard. Okay, this is what it is. This is what's going on. CNN is basically going the route of VA voters hate this one Supreme Court life hack, soy face. I like that the solution to the Supreme Court overturning the democratic wishes of the majority is to just vote harder. So what then? What happens when they still overturn those wishes as well? If it even happens, it's probably not going to. That's the entire purpose of redistricting. Is specifically so that it's virtually impossible for your voice to be heard, right? Like that's the whole goal here. And in an effort to combat against the national battle for redistricting taking place, because Donald Trump is unbelievably unpopular and knows he's going to lose the House of Representatives, he's urged Texas, the Texas Republican Party to redistrict in Texas to secure additional Republican votes by way of cheating. So then the Democrats were like, two can play that game, except we are Democrats, so we're going to play that game in the most above board, legally sound way possible, which is by referendum. And we're not even going to do that permanently. We're just going to do that until the next census takes place. Because remember, Democrats love putting these limitations on themselves ahead of time. They do everything above board, as they did in the state of Virginia, and they still were like, no, the wishes of the majority are totally secondary.
It is that people work together, that people cross the aisle, that it matters that the margins are close. If everybody's in lockstep, that becomes a huge question of Congress's ability to do anything.
And also it feels like what we are getting into here is redistricting used to be something that happened once every 10 years. And now it seems like we're headed to at least the next bunch of years where it might be happening every 2 years in a bunch of states.
Yeah.
And that changes all the way this goes.
Yeah, I just want to underscore what you're saying, because it's so important that you say extreme. I say bad.
You're acting like they're being sincere, my man. Their job is normalizing any illegal and unconventional action and subverting the attention from how this shouldn't be possible. Yeah. No, it's totally ridiculous. It's always when they go low, we go high. Always. That's the Democratic method. It's always the Democratic method. When they go low, we go high, and they just keep going lower and lower. And they keep slicing our fucking ankles every step of the goddamn way. They keep dunking on us. What are we doing?
Just bad. This is bad for America to already have so few of those sort of moderate, either Democrats or Republicans in Congress. And it's not even just that it makes your job interesting. It also helps make compromise, which is kind of the way it's supposed to work. Let's just kind of take a step back for 1 second. And our friends over at the hotline at the National Journal put into perspective not just Virginia, but what we've seen, which is why it makes it so bad for Democrats on redistricting over the last 10 days. Calais, the Supreme Court decision significantly weakened the Voting Rights Act, opening the door for more redraws. Then Tennessee Republicans passed the 9-0 congressional map. Louisiana is now on track to eliminate at least one Democratic seat. And then, of course, we just saw.
I mean, this is such a sad state of affairs, but this is probably correct. Three-way parlay. Democrats win the popular vote 56-44 in the midterms, end up with a 6-seat majority in the House, and then 4 of them die within 6 months. Or Democrats win the popular vote 56%-44 in the midterms and end up with maybe 1 majority seat in the House, given all the redistricting initiatives, and then 4 of them die within 6 months, giving the majority back to the Republicans somehow. Because right now we're looking at a new calculation in the Senate, right? You got Abdul, you got Plattner. Abdul in Michigan, and Plattner in Maine. Except there's one guy who has been caucusing with the Republicans in the Senate quite a bit. John Fetterman. So even when you lose, even when you win, you still lose. Welcome to being a Democrat, dude. And then people yell at me when I say this can't go on. Okay? I don't want fascism to win in this country, but it's winning so goddamn hard. It's doing victory laps. Okay? They're pissing on the carcass of American democracy. Please, can we fight back against it? And the Democrats are too busy yelling at me, the Twitch streamer, rather than doing something about the goddamn fascists. Yeah, if it's 51-49, Fetterman will 100% switch sides to give the majority of the reps again. Yes.
What happened in Virginia. And just to sort of continue to pick up on your point, I want to listen to the state Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey from your home state of South Carolina.
There's going to be another Democratic president at some point. I hope that's not the case, but it's going to happen. And it is important, I think, that there's somebody somebody from South Carolina can make a call and somebody at the White House will answer it.
Make sure the map accomplishes the goal. If at the end of the day we create a map that gives Democrats more competitive opportunity, what have you gained?
Like, this is not even about representing the wishes of the public at this point. It's like pure partisan politics. And they've already redistricted so hard. Okay? They've already redistricted so hard that they might end up carving out seats that are more competitive. Like, that's where we're at. Okay? That's where we're at currently in American democracy. It's so funny. They're like, we've disenfranchised voters too hard. So much so that we might enfranchise voters by accident. We can't do that. That's an interesting point from the South Carolina guy. If you actually care about your state, it's good to have someone in the governing coalition, no matter what party's in charge, but they don't really care about their state. No, of course not.
Translation, there's trepidation in South Carolina to take advantage of the Supreme Court ruling like other Southern.
Again, they're not worried. Guys, you need to understand. They've already successfully disenfranchised voters so hard in South Carolina that they're now saying we might be disenfranchising so badly that it ends up creating competitive districts where Democratic wishes could be heard. Like, they are possibly going to be victims of their own success. That's the calculation here. It's incredible. What is this? I unironically asked one of my Chinese friends what his opinion on the Cultural Revolution was, and he said his grandfather deserved to die. What the fuck? That's a bit much, don't you think? He said my grandfather was a rightist who participated in counter-revolutionary behavior, so it was good that he's gone is crazy. That's crazy. That's a crazy take. I don't know if I can support that sentiment.
Yeah, listen, because what you would probably have in South Carolina is no black representation, right? You would have seven Republicans. Clyburn would.
Can you explain the South Carolina thing more? I don't get it. South Carolina is already redistricted into oblivion. A big part of the process is chopping up these districts in a way where the reliable Democratic Party voters, more often than not black voters, right? Because that's the only vehicle for change that they have to have their voices be heard, where they're like black voters all around the country and especially in the South are making a calculated decision to vote for the less racist party. Okay? That's it. Everybody knows it. That's the whole point, right? The party that has at the very least expended social and political capital in the past, at this point, many decades ago, to actually allow black people to vote, for example, right? So they still remember that, and they're making this decision where it's like, well, both parties are pretty racist, but, you know, I'm going to go vote for the party that isn't like actively saying we need to go to prison and we need to be killed, okay? But for the Republicans, that's too much of a threat. So what they're doing is trying to roll back the clock on civil rights in this country, and they have successfully done so, right, by way of lawfare, by way of the court system, and certainly through the process of redistricting, where they take heavily populated areas where there's a lot of black voter density, and they chop them up and they slam them into other districts where they will be overpowered by the reliable Republican votes. And that's what they're doing. That's what redistricting is. True, although as a black person, it's all over the country, even where we sometimes choose to live is dependent on whether it's less racist than the other town next to it. No, absolutely. And basically, basically, there's only so many ways that you can chop these districts up. And at some point, you have to make the calculation, because there's too many black people from the perspective of the Republican Party, where are you going to chop it up in a way where you have like a bunch of plus 10 R districts? Or are you going to chop up these districts even further where you maybe have some R plus, like, because currently, let's say you have a bunch of safe, reliable Republican districts where you have successfully disenfranchised the black vote. Okay? But that means you have to have one big black district, right? That is going to be reliably voting Democrat. I already gave you the reasons as to why the black vote goes in the Democratic Party's direction. So now we're moving on from that. Now I'm giving you the second point. So there's always one district that's like putting up Assad numbers for the Democrats, right? In a lot of these Republican states, in a lot of these red states, that's because they have to cordon off all the black votes into one district and then chop up the rest of the black voters in the South into reliably Republican districts. Now, what the South Carolina gerrymander is seemingly trying to do is to move some of these districts around in an effort to, instead of having like, a bunch of plus 10 R districts and then one plus 40 blue district, they are trying to chop it up in a way where they can have only plus 4, plus 5 Republican districts. This creates a unique problem for them. If they don't, racist joke, dude? Wait, what do you mean? What's the racist joke? What? What are you talking about? People don't realize quite how racially polarized the South is. South Carolina isn't even the worst, but why South Carolina is a Trump plus 46 and a Trump plus 8 state? Yeah. So basically, then why not defend it on the basis of Republican pop versus Dem pop? Otherwise, it sounds like identity politics. Brother, because there were previously rules in the rule books to stop it on the basis of black voter disenfranchisement, specifically because it was done initially and still to this day to disenfranchise black voters. It might hurt people's feelings to think of this as idpol, okay? But that's literally what the Republicans are doing, okay? It is identity politics when the Republicans engage in anti-black politics, but because that's the overwhelming, domineering attitude that people have, anti-blackness being a core value in American politics in general, people don't see that as identity politics. They only see the retort to that as identity politics. A similar concept exists in even the gaming sphere. Maybe I'll give you an analogy that you can understand. It's not politics if there is there's a white guy that's the main character doing a bunch of political shit. It's only political if there's a black woman, right? That's what gamers are tuned into, because the norm, the default, is a white guy. So if you actually don't have a default white guy and you have a black woman or something as the main character, all of a sudden it becomes political. It's like, whoa, what is this? Call of Duty didn't used to be political. Why are you making Call of Duty political by putting a black woman? That's identity politics. No, it's still identity politics. If the default position is a white guy, that's still identity politics. Is white identity politics, but we just see that as apolitical. We see that as non-political. You get it? Robert Reich has a better explanation. He explains it in 30 seconds. Here.
Now, here are 16 black dots and 12 white squares. If districts were not gerrymandered, they might look like this, and 3 out of 4 would have black dot majorities. But after gerrymandering, 3 out of 4 have white square majorities.
Yeah. So now they're trying to game it out. You see how there's the one super majority black dot district here? Okay. South Carolina has a problem. They're trying to parse this up in a way. They're trying to piece up the one black majority district into all of these other districts, but they simply don't have enough votes. Okay? That's their worry. Where they're like, okay, we want to eradicate the last black dot district that we have and cordon it off in a way where, you know, it just perishes in an effort to disenfranchise the voters there and their needs. But that creates a unique problem where all of a sudden the margins are far too narrow for every other district. That's the reason why the South Carolina politicians are worried about potentially redistricting the state. Because they've already done such a good job of disenfranchising the black vote that if they disenfranchise it further, it might end up making more competitive districts. This is the same in Florida. Okay, it's the same in South Carolina. That's the only thing stopping them from doing this.
Not in Congress. He's got the 6th district. So yeah, this is a pendulum swing, right? And the idea is that, you know, every action often has an equal and opposite reaction. And are we going to get into the situation where, as you said, every 2 years there is some different map? And it sows, I think, distrust and disengagement among voters, right? Particularly in some of these states where it isn't even the voters that are making the decision.
Yeah, the problem is the Republicans have already racism maxed, okay? And if they try to racism max a little bit, they end up the min-maxing and ironically create a voting system where they might lose seats. That's their fear.
It is elected leaders of one party. And so this, I think, has set off a real arms race where we could see a House that doesn't really represent America.
I think we're already there, but all right. So the first story was Virginia. Now we go to Tennessee. This Twitter user says the KKK is alive and well in Tennessee. The sergeant of arms blocks Representative Justin Pearson, who's goated, from entering a committee meeting about redrawing the map specifically for the district he represents. Fucking shameful. Okay, so let's take a look at what's going on in Tennessee. Protesters are demonstrating against Tennessee redistricting that could give GOP an advantage. Now, that's a very nice way to put it. What the GOP is doing is basically eradicating the last black majority district in the state of Tennessee. They're just saying, nope, Tennessee's all red. Fuck it.
Are giving their party a better chance to win every congressional seat in November. They voted to eliminate the state's only black majority district on Thursday. Opponents held a passionate...
Like, that's insane. Look at this. Look at this.
Eliminate the state's only black majority district on...
It's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. My district is, I just don't even know what we're supposed to do now in Memphis. Because remember, when you lose that political representation, your district no longer is going to get the funds necessary, for example. Like, you need to have someone represent your interests, okay? So you have to remember, like, even having one guy in that situation matters quite a bit, okay? This is a huge problem with Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico doesn't have the adequate representation, for example, and that's part of the reason why Puerto Rico gets shafted all the goddamn time. It's a territory. This is voter disenfranchisement through and through. For the black voters in this state, their only reliable option here is Memphis.
Thursday. Opponents
like we often forget that, like, oh, these southern states are so poor, they're so right wing, they suck. And it's like there's heavy political polarization that has taken shape in these states that have a legacy of slavery, they have a legacy of disenfranchisement of black voters. But these states, just like California, still has like a ton of Republicans, right? There's a ton of Democrats. Specifically black Democrats in these states, okay? And we just never hear from them. We never fund any institutions or fund any movements that will fight for them. We just completely have given up.
Passionate demonstration. They say this move punishes black voters. Supporters, though, say the new maps are not driven by race.
Yeah, they can't say that it's driven by race, obviously, because it's still kind of illegal. Okay. That's the only reason why they're like, no, this is purely partisan. This is purely partisan. You can't prove it. I mean, in Tennessee, it's the one state where you could technically prove it because these will sometimes get a little too active and say the quiet part out loud, for example, you know?
This fight is playing out.
Chaos at the Tennessee Capitol in Nashville Thursday as Democratic lawmakers and protesters tried to stop legislation breaking up the state's only Democratic House seat. Yelling, holding signs, calling the move Jim Crow 2.0, even burning a printout of the Confederate flag. Change follows a Supreme Court ruling last week that narrowed the Voting Rights Act. CBS News election law analyst David Becker says the ruling has this effect.
And in some cases, that's going to mean that they blanch their entire state's delegation and really minimize the impact of the minority population in the state.
That's the concern for Democratic Congressman Shamari Figures in Montgomery, Alabama, where a similar pending Supreme Court decision could draw his majority black district off the map.
So what that translates into is this. It's okay to discriminate against Democrats who are black, but it's not okay to discriminate against black Democrats. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Alabama's Attorney General says it's just a question of reflecting the state's Republican tilt.
Alabama's a conservative state. I expect that we'll have conservative representatives.
Civil rights activist Doris Crenshaw, who at 12 years old started working on civil rights issues with Rosa Parks, was at an...
Nashville was already one of the most egregious examples of racial gerrymandering as shown by the 2022 redraw. They followed the same method in Memphis, yeah. A masterclass in election rigging, how Republicans dismembered a Democratic stronghold. Scroll through our visual guide to see how Tennessee Republicans carved up Nashville to benefit themselves. Republican lawmakers in Tennessee gave a final approval on Monday to an aggressive plan to split Nashville, a Democratic bastion in a deeply Republican state, into several congressional districts as a part of an effort to tilt the state's congressional map in their favor. The plan is now waiting for approval from Governor Bill Lee, who's likely to sign it. Here, I'll give you an example of how this works, by the way. This is exactly how, when you have ballot measures, right, in places like Tennessee, where I don't know, like there's overwhelming support for increasing the minimum wage, and you end up getting like 60% of the entire state to vote to protect abortion, right, or to increase the minimum wage for paid family leave, things like that. You do all of this stuff, and people clearly have an appetite for it, but the representation within the state does not make any sense. We're like, what do you mean? This is a state that has 60% approval, or is very clearly in favor of these like unbelievably progressive ballot measures, and yet some of those ballot measures never actually go through, even if people vote for it. Sometimes in the state legislature, you end up losing, or the state legislature will actively work to undermine the democratic wishes of the public. And this is how it works. I'm absolutely fuming over the VA decision. It's so bad. The legal reasoning is absurd on its face. Yeah, this is how it happens. This is how they rig the system so that the democratic wishes of the majority are never followed on. And this happens this happens everywhere. This happens especially in deep red states, though. Democrats acting like pussies has got to end. I agree. Nashville currently sits in the state's 5th congressional district, represented by Jim Cooper, a Democrat who has held the seat for nearly 20 years. It's a solid Democratic district. Joe Biden carried it by nearly 24 points in 2020, but on Tuesday, Cooper announced he was retiring from Congress. Despite my strength of the polls, I could not stop the General Assembly from dismembering Nashville. No one really tried harder to keep our city whole, he said in a statement. I explored every possible way, including lawsuits to stop the gerrymandering and to win one of the 3 new congressional districts that now divide Nashville. There's no way, at least for me, in this election cycle, but there may be a path for other worthy candidates. Here are the results of the 2020 presidential race in central Tennessee surrounding Nashville. The circles represent the results by precinct. The bigger the circle, the bigger the margin of victory for either Democrats or Republicans. This is Tennessee's 5th congressional district, currently represented by a Democrat. Joe Biden won the district by 24 points in 2020. Republicans have created new maps that split the Democratic voters into 3 heavily GOP districts where they're in the minority. Fox News is talking about you.